Well, I'm really tempted to start off saying I hope you're sitting comfortably because we might be here for a while, but I guess that's probably not the place to start, but seriously. And I did miss the second part of the verse, actually. The second part of the verse, the he said. I won't be speaking on the he said. I'm just going to read up to the NIV headline. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside. He sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. It's a very short passage. Just 26 words. And we have to be very careful that we don't add or take anything away from Scripture by reading too much or too little in. So we don't want to embellish it. But it is right to read Scripture in the light of Scripture, which is something John Ed rammed into me when he first asked me to start speaking. And I'm sure he plagiarised that from somebody else. So let's break it down into three component parts of these two very short verses. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, secondly, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. And then thirdly, his disciples came to him and he began to teach them. So taking that first section, now when Jesus saw the crowds. And we know from Matthew chapter 9 verse 36 that when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus' heart is one that is full of compassion for the crowds. That's what motivated him to go through all the towns and the villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. That's Matthew 9:25. And it's the bookmark that finishes the section that starts in Matthew 4, verse 23. The same verse. Jesus' heart was for the crowds. So we can be sure when Jesus, that's Jesus who is now at the right hand of God, who intercedes for us, Romans 8:34. When Jesus sees us and he sees the crowd, he still has compassion on them. And he's still working. He's interceding on our behalf. So let's jump to the second part. He went up onto the mountain and he sat down. Now I know it's often taught by preachers when they speak about this that it was common practice for rabbis, teachers in Jesus' day to sit and to teach from a position of teaching. But that wasn't really what I was thinking about. When I first saw that, what jumped out at me was how different that is to the school teachers and college lecturers that I've known, and even preachers today. We generally stand to teach. I used to think when I was at school it was so they could prowl around to make sure we stayed awake and concentrated. Lost count of the amount of times that suddenly a ruler would end up across my knuckles when I was daydreaming or paying attention. Maybe that was just me, and maybe they don't do that anymore. But it's very different to how Jesus sat down to teach. It seems to be more of an intimacy, a calmness to that situation when Jesus sits down. Feels so much more personal, doesn't it? Sit down, have a conversation with somebody, very different to somebody standing up and lecturing you. It is so much more relaxed. It's unrushed. Dare I even say, it seems more vulnerable if you're sat down. And it seems to be at odds very much with the way we teach today. But also, it's a reflection on Jesus' ultimate posture. After he had provided purifications for sin, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 4. And then thirdly, his disciples came to him and he began to teach them. Here I see Jesus expressing that open welcomeness for his disciples, inviting them to come in and to sit at his feet. Verse 2 is very short and sharp. It's to the point. And he began to teach them. Again, there's no embellishment. It's just a simple statement, a fact. It doesn't require any formal ritual. There's no official invitation. There's not even any recognised protocols. There's no drama. There's no introduction. Even though they're meeting and they're sitting down with the King of Glory, it's just calm and quiet and comfortable. And Jesus says, "Now let me teach you." This is just a simple coming together, familiar and friendly. So how did this challenge me? I usually rush through the agenda of my day. I normally wake up and my first thought is, what's on my to-do list? And then what do I need to add to remember to that to-do list? Well, firstly, Jesus is compassionate. He longs to share the gospel, the good news of his gospel with me. Our welfare, our good was the reason for his earthly ministry. And it's still his ministry today. Even though he is sat down at the right hand of the majesty of heaven, even though he is busy sustaining all things, yet he has capacity. And his purpose is to intercede for me and for you. Romans 8:34 again. And secondly, and I can't square this one in my mind, so although it's one point, I have to separate it into two things. Jesus is sat on his throne at the right hand of his Father. He is awesome. He's awful. He's full of awe. We need to come before him with reverent fear, praise and worship. But the other side of that is that he is still so tender and gentle and welcoming. He is so calm, so quiet and so soothing. I can casually walk into his presence. I can sit quietly at his feet and I can still learn from him. I don't need any special invitation. I don't need any ritual or liturgy. I can come calmly just as I am, or even messed up as I am. And he welcomes me. Just like his Father, he delights in me. He even sings tender songs over me. Problem for me is I'm not very good at being like those disciples. I'm generally much more worried that I need to get on with that busy to-do list. Or I'm easily distracted by the non-consequential things that rob me of the experience of being in his presence and really quietly learning from him. So I wonder, what will you choose?